Hi readers, we're back for another day of determining character traits and being able to write about them. So during our lesson today, you'll be doing a lot of pausing, thinking, writing. Pausing, thinking, writing. So with that being said, you'll need a notebook and a pencil or some paper, and it wouldn't hurt to have your character traits sheet available to you as a resource. So let's get started. As a reminder from yesterday, we use text evidence about a character's actions, thoughts, and words to determine our character traits. We know that characters are more than one way. We know that they're complicated. So we're going to take that knowledge of our character traits and we're going to write. So we bring our thoughts today to Tiger Rising, and we're going to think about Rob in particular. So using what we know of Tiger Rising so far, I want you to think of some text evidence that you've heard to determine Rob's character traits. Now remember, Rob is complicated. So I want you to write at least 2 character traits and support those traits with text evidence. Pause, think, and write. We're answering really the question, what kind of person is Rob? So I want you to try to remember the pattern from yesterday. We state that Rob is complicated, and then we say trait, evidence, trait, evidence. So here it unfolds. Rob is complicated. He is, first character trait, I know this because. Insert the text evidence. And then continue your paragraph, continue your writing. He is also, second character trait, I know this because, and then text evidence that supports that. Reminder, you should be able to check, or can you check these statements? I wrote about how the character is complicated. This means I told about how the character could have more than one trait. Hopefully you did that. Second is that you provide text evidence, details or quotes from different parts of the text to support your thinking. So hopefully this is feeling pretty good right now, readers, writers, and then I'm going to share mine with you. What kind of person is Rob? Rob is complicated. He is often passive. I know this because throughout the book he responds to others by shrugging or nodding. For example, when Sistine needed to call her mom, she asked Rob why they didn't have a phone, and he shrugged. She tells him her mom is coming, and he responds only by nodding. And that's just one example of Rob shrugging and nodding. Rob is also creative. I know this because he drew a picture of the tiger, and he whittles to create a variety of statues. Like Sistine says, sculptures. I was able to check my writing and prove that I hit the mark of writing in response to character traits. Let's keep practicing. Keep trying. So using the story again, Tiger Rising, let's think of Sistine. Think of some character traits that we might choose for Sistine and think about the evidence that we would use to support that our choices for character traits. Pause, think, and write. And then readers, again, we're answering the question now using that information. What kind of person is Sistine? Remember the pattern. And I've given you a little bit to follow here. Pause and write. And then you should be able to check these statements that we've talked about already. How is your character complicated? Do you have text evidence to support that? Great. Now we get to our story. We get to chapter 27 of Tiger Rising. So I will leave you with not leave you. I will remind you that the decision was made by Rob to to let the tiger go, and he says that he's going to do it for Sistine. He's going to do it for her. So we begin chapter 27. Get your movies going, get your thinking going. The first key slid into the first lock so smoothly that it made Rob dizzy with amazement. It was going to be easy to let the tiger go. "Hurry," Sistine said to him. "Hurry up, get the other locks." He opened the second lock and the third, and then he took them off one by one and handed them to Sistine, who laid them on the ground. "Now, open the door," she said. Rob's heart pounded and fluttered in his chest. "What if he eats us?" he asked. "He won't," said Sistine. "He'll leave us alone out of gratitude. We're his emancipators." An emancipator is someone who sets something free. Rob flung the door open wide. "Get out of the way!" he shouted, and they both jumped back from the door and waited. But the tiger ignored them. He continued to pace back and forth in the cage, oblivious to the open door. "Go on," Rob said to him. "You're free," Sistine whispered. I'm pausing for a moment because, readers, I cannot imagine standing so close to a tiger who is going to be set free after being in a cage. I just can't imagine what that would feel like. The tiger didn't even look in the direction of the door. Sistine crept forward and grabbed hold of the cage, and she shook it. "Get out!" she screamed. "Come on," she said, turning to Rob. "Help me. Help me get him out." Rob grabbed hold of the fence and shook it. "Get!" he said. The tiger stopped pacing and turned to stare at them both, clinging like monkeys to the cage. "Go on!" Rob shouted, suddenly furious. He shook the cage harder. He yelled. He put his head back and howled. And he saw that the sky above them was thick with clouds, and that made him even angrier. He yelled louder. He shouted at the dark sky, and he shook the cage as hard as he could. Then Sistine put a hand on his arm. "Shh," she said. "He's leaving. Watch." As they stared, the tiger stepped with grace and delicacy out of the cage. He put his nose up and sniffed. He took one tiny step and then another. Then he stopped and stood still. Sistine clapped her hands, and the tiger turned and looked back at them both with eyes blazing. And then he started to run. He ran so fast, it looked to Rob like he was flying. His muscles moved like a river. It was hard to believe that a cage had ever contained him. It didn't even seem possible. The tiger went leaping through the grass, moving farther and farther away from Rob and Sistine. He looked like the sun, rising and setting again and again. And watching him go, Rob felt his own heart rising and falling, beating in time. Oh, readers, the tiger's out. The tiger's out of its cage. They did. Rob did it. Sistine did it. They set the tiger free, and now they're just watching it travel away from the cage. And if we're strong readers right now, I'm sure some of you have so many questions. What happens next? Right? What happens next? What's Beauchamp gonna say? Willie Mae knows about the tiger. What's she like? What? Right? If you want to, if you're at home, write some of your questions down. If you're in the classroom, write your thoughts down or even predictions as to where this is going. So thank you for listening. You have one more slide, and that is your independent reading either at home or at school. You're going to read your independent book and practice your strong reading skills. Thank you. Can't wait to continue with you. Bye, readers.